We will continue the same topic and we'll dive much deeper. Now you understand how secondary electrons are generated, and we learned that they are generated close to the surface, and we also learned about general things about how SEM is built, the lenses, detectors, two kinds of detectors, their advantages, and the detection mechanism, and electron sources, and different kinds of field emission sources and thermal sources, like different kinds of sources, electron sources. So today we are moving further to learn how the images are produced by those electrons. We also learned the difference between backscattered electrons and secondary electrons and Auger, etc. Their penetration depth. We had a lot of discussion about the uh, sampling depth actually. So we take it forward. Now we have some background. So life will be easier for you the more lectures you attend and more attentive you are. Otherwise, the life is going to be difficult. And don't miss even a single lecture and ask plenty of questions, because this series is very rewarding. But many times rewarding things are bit difficult. In long term, it will be rewarding. I promise you. So. So first thing is that the incident electron, they knock out the uh, basically secondary electrons from top surface and subsurface, and these electrons have very little kinetic energy. Okay, around 5 electron volt. So and one each electron, because the incident electron energy is relatively quite high, it is in few tens of kilo electron volt. So one incident electron can knock out several secondary electrons. I think last time we learned about Z contrast. Actually, the Z contrast is lost. There is no information about which atom these secondary electrons belong. So don't look for uh, identification of type of atoms from secondary electron images. We'll discuss this point today also. So primarily, secondary electrons are used for topography, and they have excellent lifelike images. We'll see how these lifelike images are generated, right? So one thing you should always remember, that these electrons are picked up as shallow as 10 nanometer. So below 10 nanometer, secondary electrons do not have enough kinetic energy to escape. Okay, so they just get scattered within the sample itself. Backscattered samples have the same energy as of incident primary beam. So they can escape from the deeper subsurface areas of the sample. So when you are looking for chemistry information, chemical information about your sample, so please remember that backscattered uh, electrons carry the subsurface atomic uh, information. For example, your composition is varying in your sample. Suppose you are taking, a catalyst where you have some fine nanoparticles on the surface supported on some oxide substrate. So oxide, like for example, you have alumina, and then on top of that you have some, for example, some 3D metal, okay, or 4D, whatever, palladium or platinum, whatever. So you are looking for when you're bombarding primary beam. So if you're looking for identification of type of atom, so please remember that depending upon the coating of top layer, the backscattered electrons have capability to give you information from deeper level, deeper than 10 nanometer, which is the okay. So secondary electron signal varies with the topography of the sample surface, much like in aerial photograph. So edges are bright and recesses are dark. So you have valleys, so valleys will look darker, and the edges, the peaks will look bright. So that's why SEM images, in contrast to TM images, they are quite attractive, and I will show you some examples of edge effect and how to avoid that. So you can see this image that you have an arbitrary shaped sample, because uh, so your electron beam is scanning actually. You know this is not stationary. Okay, so here, so this electron beam is raster scanning. So it starts from right and then it moves to the left. But in this journey, wherever this primary beam hits this sample, so if it hits this part, so you can see that electrons, secondary electrons will be generated in all the direction, because there is no particular directionality. So you can see that a lot of electrons from uh, suppose suppose your electron beam is scanning this area, so it's this will look slightly darker, this area. And when it moves to this area here, so there are more chances that secondary electron generated from these areas will reach to the detector. Once your electron beam uh, moves to this part of the specimen, this will look very bright actually, because almost uh, plenty of electrons will be available to reach to the secondary electron detector. Okay. So when it moves further down here, so you can see that this recess will look much, or this crevice look much darker, and these areas which are hidden will look also darker, right? Because secondary electron cannot escape like this or something like that, because this is quite thick. Uh, there's no dimension here, but probably this dimension, assuming that it is thicker than 10 nanometer, again these areas will light up, right? So some of the areas will light up and some of the areas will uh, show darker region. So when you look the image as a whole, so you will find that this is looking more lifelike actually. It looks like, it's a real image. So you can expand on that and think it requires some effort for you to uh, connect with how the secondary electrons are being generated and detected by the beam. But I can just show you several examples here. So these images we have already scanned. Just for your reminder, I've included them again in this slide. Okay. So there are plenty of repetition here, so in case you forget. So you can see that this kind of like a balloon area is your interaction volume within the sample when the primary beam hits the sample. So you can see that from this balloon area, the secondary electrons are generated. That is the area where secondary electrons are picked up. They are just going everywhere in the other direction. But you can see that when the surface is closer from this balloon, around 10 nanometer or less, then electrons have possibility that they can escape and then they can reach the detector. But you can see that, but it's not true for these areas. For example, electron beam, when it moves here, it will not be able to scan this area because detector is towards this side. So it's like you are lighting up. So you have a light bulb here. Okay. So if your detector is towards this side, then it will be different story, right? You can see this surface as bright and this surface is dark. Okay. So another very interesting thing which might have attracted already your attention is this image. Sorry.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
sir, good evening. I'm Anshul.
Yes, yes, sir.
Sir, in the previous slide, you told that the backscattered electrons gives the information of the chemical analysis or the composition, but
Yes.
they are given by the characteristic X-rays, no, sir. In this slide also, here it is X-rays gives the composition
Yes, yes,
information.
yes, yes, you're right. So I think I answered this question in previous lecture also, but I'm again answering. There are there are several techniques which can give you the same information. For example, the uh, compositional analysis can be done by yields, number one, number two by X-rays like EDAX, and number two by backscattered electrons. Okay, and by Auger also. So compositional analysis can be done by this. Sorry. So compositional analysis can be done by X-rays, which is very popular. I'm sorry, this one, and by Auger. Okay, Auger can do that, and secondary electrons can't do that. And then you have these backscattered electrons, right? There are three techniques, and yields also. Yields is not mentioned here, but three techniques can, because yields is not used in SEF. But if you are using TEM, then yields can also give you same information. But now the question arises that what is the quality of the information actually? How accurate it is? Like for example, once you join NCL physically, when you start doing your uh, research work, and when you start doing some characterization, often you cross check the same information. For example, you want to look for elemental analysis. So elemental analysis can be done by variety of techniques actually. You can do it through XPS, you can do it through ICP. Of course, there are these microscopy techniques. You can use XRF, right? So many techniques are there actually, but it is always advisable that you use 3-4 maximum complementary techniques, and to confirm every technique has got its own advantages and disadvantages. Answer back to you.
Sir, another small question, sir.
Mhm.
It's a small question.
Yes, yes, please. That's my job to answer your question.
Sir, the other electrons are there, no, sir. It is meant for the only surface analysis, like
Hmm.
it can't penetrate like the characteristic X-rays or the
Yes, yes,
backscattered
yes,
electrons. So
yes.
in the previous slide, means the next slide, you wrote the for the compositional analysis also. How so?
I did not get your question. Can you repeat it?
Sir, you go to the next slide, sir. No,
Next,
next,
next or
next, sir.
okay,
Forward.
this one, right?
So here you tick the other electrons. So no, sir, please, no,
This one
this
here,
one.
no? Yeah,
No,
yeah.
here surface and also compositional information
Yes,
is
yes,
there.
yes, yes. So Auger electrons are highly surface sensitive. So they Auger electrons and X-ray photoelectrons are highly surface sensitive. What this sentence means is that they give you information only about only for few nanometer. When I say few nanometer, I would say that 2-3 nanometer maximum. Okay.
Then here it is written that compositional information also.
Yes, yes. Azure gives you compositional information. Yes.
Sir, by scanning the surface itself, we can get the compositional analysis, sir.
No, I did not understand the question. So yes, by just yeah, just if you have to have Azure detector. You need
No,
to
sir.
have.
No, sir. My doubt is that if we take any sample, then the other electrons have been like incident onto the sample. So, will it give the compositional analysis if we keep the other detector there?
Yes, see, you are bombarding high energy electrons, which are 20 to 30 kilo electron volt in this case, and 10 times higher in TEM. So all there are many kinds of interactions which happen with the sample between incident electron beam and the sample, And there are many kinds of signals which are generated. Like you have X-rays which are coming from core electrons being knocked out, and then the electron from the top orbitals, they take the position of those vacant energy levels, and then you have generation of X-rays. So when you pick it up, then you have, when you pick up X-rays, if you have a detector for X-rays, then you get the information about composition analysis from X-rays as well. So if those X-rays are absorbed by the, when they are, see this, when the X-ray photons are coming out of the sample, they are not always as they don't always have option to come out unabsorbed. So they can get internally absorbed, and then they can knock out another electron from core. So that is called Auger electrons, right? And if you, and that is also that is also basically the energy of that Auger electron is specific to that particular atom. So that tells you identity about the atomic number. So if you are detecting that Auger electron, then you know the composition analysis of okay. But the difference, there are many differences between X-ray generation and X-ray detection, as well as the Auger detection. So X-rays, as you rightly said, that they give you information about composition analysis from a from far deep, actually deep level okay, of the sample. But Auger electron give you only surface information. Okay, got it?
Sir, another small question.
Yes.
Sorry to
No.
ask so many. Sir, as we know that the backscatter electrons gives the Z contrast, it means the
yes, backscatter also gives the Z contrast.
sir, then means it need to penetrate to such depth that it should give a Z contrast. Then without knowing the number, atomic number, without knowing the Z from the surface, how the
you are right. I was discussing. Yes, you are right. I got your point. See, very interesting. You have asked very practical problem. I think I answered this, and I was discussing with my students also after the previous class. So that is an advantage of X-rays. So X-ray detection is like a fingerprint fingerprint technique. So like thanks to Mosley. So if you know the frequency of X-ray energy, you can calculate. Then you can easily because X-ray gives you spectra. X-ray, okay. I have shown you. I will, if you don't remember, I'll show you. Show you
no,
again.
sir, not the X-ray, sir. You told that other.
I'm coming back. I'm coming to that. Yeah, I'm coming to that. So that is an advantage, that X-rays can directly be analyzed, and you can identify the atomic number. But you are right that, for example, if you are trying to detect the same information, compositional information, by, for example, backscattered electrons. So backscattered electrons do not directly tell you that this electron. Okay, for example, I will show you one image. Just a moment. Actually, this thing will be discussed. Actually, in coming slide we'll be going much deeper into the backscatter. There are so many slides, so many examples. So you anyway, you want to you want the question now? So I'll I have some beautiful slides for you. Yeah, look at this. So you have a case where you have aluminum and copper. Okay, there is a vast difference between the atomic number of aluminum, which is 11, and copper, which is 29. Right now. 29 is for copper, and 13 for, sorry, 13 for aluminum. Yeah, thanks for correcting me. This is 13 and this is 29. Yeah, my memory is getting worse and worse because I'm getting older actually. So okay, so now in this case, answer, the problem is that, as you rightly mentioned, that okay, So I have a backscatter detector, and it will tell me that aluminum is scattering less backscattered. I mean, my backscattered electron, when it is on this surface, will record less number of backscattered electrons, and when it is on copper, it will record more number of. Uh, so it will just tell relatively that this is low Z and this is high Z. I agree with you. So you should have a in this case it's you should have a prior information that you have aluminum and copper, or you if you calibrate if you have some internal calibration about backscatter detector, that you can detect that this number of electron scattering. But it's not always so easy, because uh, uh, backscatter electron intensity can be also influenced by topography and other factors. It's not only the Z. Okay, so but that's the problem with the backscattering, that unlike in X-rays, I agree with you that it's not. You have to just guess that okay, this is low Z and this is high Z, or this is middle Z, or something like that. It will give you this that kind of information. But then you have to find out. But it's a good imaging tool. I mean, so there are always some. You can have some contamination on the top, so this that can affect. We'll study those problems when we study deeper into the backscatter. I hope this answer your question right now. But we'll be
Sir,
discussing.
I asked a different question, sir.
Oh, okay. I don't. Can you ask it again?
Sir, means like for getting a Z contrast analysis, we need the backscatter electrons, which
Yes.
go deeper into the some more depth than the secondary and Auger electrons
Yes.
into the samples with high energy. Then
Yes.
it gives the Z like atomic number. But you are saying that other electrons can also give the compositional analysis. For the composition analysis, you need to know what is the element used there, or means which elements are present in what form. Like, is there an alloy or a pure metal or something like that? Without knowing Z, how can you know which element is that, or composition it has?
You are asking this question for the Auger or for the backscatter?
Sir, Auger electrons, sir.
Oh, Auger is a finger. Auger is as easy as X-rays. Auger is also a fingerprinting technique, because you know the core energies, right? So there is a database on database available that this energy will respect to that these. Suppose this Auger energy, Auger electron energy is this much, so you can always back calculate. It's very easy, very easy. For Auger, it is easy. Yes. The problem is with the backscattered electrons. It's not straight direct. For Auger and X-rays, and for X-ray photoelectrons, it's very easy. Very easy. Yeah. Because Auger electron, Auger electron is coming directly from your core, right? You know the core energy level for different atoms, right? Got it?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I'll be teaching Auger. This question will be answered in detail. Do not worry, because I remember the onion structure. So I'll be teaching, in fact, in 2 lectures, the elastic scattering. Then this Auger will be like, will be clear like anything to you. Okay, I'll be telling actually the history behind Auger, discovery of Auger, and I spend a lot of time on Auger spectroscopy, and don't worry about that. I'll be going very deep. So in case you have not understood, because I don't carry the slides right now for Auger, because that's not the focus right now. So, but don't worry, I'll be going back to Auger when I teach inelastic scattering.
Yes. And
So,
sir,
yes.
please share the slides.
I'll definitely do that. I'll definitely do that. All my previous batch students, they still have access to the earlier folders. I can actually, what I can do, I can share with all of you the folder of earlier batch where all the slides are already there. But I slightly keep on modifying in the each batch, so it takes me time to you know you know do all those processing actually, because in before uh, sending it to you, I need to remove the hidden slides, because there is a lot of there are actually two times extra slides. Suppose I'm showing you 200 slides. There are more than 400 slides for me, which I cut down the syllabus. Actually, I have to cut down the syllabus because not all the information is you can't digest. So there are a lot of advanced slides which I need to hide actually. So
Okay, sir.
those I need to chop, you understand, and trim, and then
Yes,
I
sir.
need to trim that, and it's a process actually. It's a very boring process. It's, believe me, answer, it's a boring process. So what I will do, I will share the earlier slides, and they're as good as
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So anybody else? एक लड़की क्वेश्चन पूछ रही है, बाकी लोग चुप बैठे हुए हैं. पूछो भाई.
सब उसी ने पूछ लिया सर,
हाँ.
हमारा वाला भी उसने पूछ लिया.
Who are you? Who are
सर
हम?
हेमंत.
हाँ,
हेमंत.
हेमंत. अब नाम बता दिया करो भाई, मुझे नहीं पता तुम कौन हो.
ओके सर.
मेरा वॉइस रिकॉग्निशन सिस्टम इतना अच्छा नहीं है क्योंकि मैंने तुम्हारा चेहरा नहीं देखा है.
ओके
और मैं
सर.
कोई आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस वाला भी कोई रोबोट नहीं हूँ यार. नेक्स्ट टाइम प्रोबब्ली आई विल इंस्टॉल वन. हाँ.
सर शेयर द स्लाइड विदाउट कटिंग सर.
आप पागल हो गए हो, नहीं समझ पाओगे.
So scientist
try to
is some
हाँ. नो. अरे इसको समझ लो, बहुत बड़ी बात है मेरे लिए, बहुत बड़ी मेहरबानी होगी, और पास कर लो एग्जाम, है ना.
सर वो तो हो जाएगा सर.
ज्यादा एडवेंचरस मत बनो, ज्यादा हाँ शेर मत बनो, है ना.
ओके सर.
नहीं, इतना समझ लो, वो फिजिक्स वाले लोगों के लिए. पहले भी लास्ट स्लाइड आल्सो, in the last presentation also I cut lot of topics actually, lot of topics which I cannot teach. See this, I can tell you that this course, if I have to teach it, will take completely, it will take me 2 years. Okay, I need to cut it down to a few classes because one semester, 1/3 I'll be teaching this actually. So this is, I don't teach like even 10% of what I know actually in electron microscopy because of the time constraint, and I don't know how much attention deficit disorder is also increasing in this mobile generation actually. So these are the challenges, and online teaching and other things. So in fact, if you can, that's why I have given it onion structure. So at least one onion, then another difficult onion, then I keep increasing the level of difficulties. So anyway, so now this TM and SEM will be over this week, and from next week I'll be again taking up TEM. In fact, it will be not just TM, it will be many things actually. You will understand Auger spectroscopy, XPS, X-ray diffraction, TEM, SEM from next week. It will be we'll be understanding so many new things. Okay, so let me go ahead with the next slide. So yeah, so focusing here, I think now this will be easier for you. Just a moment. So you can see that. Let me try. My student told me that I can zoom the image. Zoom in, yes. So I will try.
सर.
दिख रहा है zoom?
सर you can also use control and wheel of the mouse.
अरे यार मेरे पास माउस चूहा नहीं है मेरे पास, है ना. अब जो दिख रहा है देखो, उसे संतोष कर लो, अभी बाद में सिखा देना मुझे.
ओके सर.
अभी दिख रहा है ना zoom? हाँ. So you can see that silicon is Z is equal to 14 and gold is Z is equal to 79. Now you can see that one interesting thing, you can see that gold, the interaction volume is smaller, and for silicon it is larger. So silicon being less atomic number, so you have in every atom you have 14 electrons in comparison to 79 electrons for every gold atom. So so when the incoming electron tries to enter into the silicon, so the same energy electron can enter much deeper into the silicon sample in comparison to gold. So gold will stop it actually much earlier and will scatter it back. That's the reason that it will scatter. It will. Okay. So more electron dense elements will stop it so that is this concept is actually also very useful in deciding what is the sample thickness for transmission electron microscopy. That means if you are if you're working on silicon containing compounds, so you can afford to take uh, larger thickness than gold. So you can see that gold can stop within few tens of nanometer, and gold will look darker in transmission electron microscopy. So yeah, so I carry plenty of beautiful slides here. So you can see this is a image of butterfly wing here, and I hope this is clear already because we have already. So you can see another beautiful slide here. Uh, this is like three-dimensional effect, like lighting effect, but this is all fake because of the reason we have already discussed. And this is the edge effect from this is the image of razor blade. This one. So you can see that the sharp edges show more secondary electron reaching to the detector. That's why it looks brighter. So the darker areas means less secondary electrons are reaching to the detector, not like they're less electrons are generated. There may be plenty of electrons, secondary electrons, which are being thrown out, but they are not reaching to the detector because of the topographical issues. So basically, it gives you idea about topography. And this image shows you the protrusions or bumps or okay on the from the wing of an insect, and again you can see a lot of interesting detail uh, from those beautiful areas. And this is an image of beetle, and you can see that the electron detector is somewhere. You can see these golden arrows. So the detector is somewhere here. So that's the reason that these this belly of the insect looks darker and the back looks brighter. And okay, so another image of diatoms which are found in water bodies. Okay. So these are primarily made of silicon, and you can see this beautiful structure. And again, looks like uh, taken from a normal camera actually. Hmm. Now, this question was first time asked. When I was preparing for these lectures, one of my chemistry student, Adish Jaiswal, who graduated, I think, 2011. I think 2011 is long back, 10 years back. Now he's a professor somewhere. I mean, he got job immediately in a central university immediately after. Um, Finishing his PhD, he did not actually do any postdoc. He immediately got job from many universities. So he asked me this question when I was teaching separately to my own group. Uh, that is there any Z dependence of secondary electron images? The question I have already answered, but again, the repetition that because we apply voltage positive bias to the secondary electrons detector. So, and if there is any information, then it is just washed out. It's masked, it's basically masked actually. I mean, first of all, there is no jet contrast in secondary electrons. Even if there is any jet contrast, it is all washed out because secondary electrons are actually coming from valence band and conduction band, which have very little information about what which atom type of atom they belong. Okay, because there is a lot of issues with the type of bonding and other things, actually environmental effect on the atom. So yeah, now people always ask that what kind of accelerating voltage we should be using. Actually, these are a little bit advanced topics, but I hope you will understand. though if you do not understand, तुम्हारा काम चल जाएगा. Okay. So, but you can see that there are always advantages and disadvantages. So you have to basically tell the operator when you are, or operator has to discuss these things with you. Then they can be very serious. Sometimes students bring the images with a lot of damage and charging, and you can actually see in SEM the damage is being done to your sample. So, for example, you are scanning a larger smaller area. For example, you are scanning this area, suppose like 100 nanometer by 100 nanometer, and then your beam is focused, primary beam on this area, and then you are trying to collect the secondary electron, and then you zoom out to the larger area, for example, 1 micron or 10 micron by 10 micron area. So you can actually clearly see the image of this burned up area. Actually, you can see this differently, that this area has been imaged. So this will be showing, you can see in the topography. So that means this there is some damage or there is some charging at this area. When you zoom, you can clearly see that this area has been earlier imaged. So that's the reason that you need to fine tune with the help of the operator. You have to advise him, and that don't apply too much of voltage. So there are some trade-offs that low accelerating voltage obviously will have, you will be collecting electrons from surface, not from the subsurface. For example, you take two examples of low atomic number specimen and high atomic number specimen. So when you apply low voltage and high voltage, you can see that you're sampling greater depth. But so what the problem is that here, you might read at many places that high accelerating voltage will give you better resolution, which is true actually. High accelerating voltage, normally you can afford, your beam is much sharper or something. You have much higher, signal to noise ratio. But the problem is that when you bombard the sample with the high voltage, so your resolution becomes worse. You can see that the sampling area becomes larger laterally also, right? Because you are not now you are picking up electron from a broader area, actually. Broader area, right? So that means you are worsening the resolution actually instead of making it better. So one has to compromise. Instead of that, if somebody if somebody uses FESEM, where you increase the current density. So when I say density, that means in the when you basically your beam size is smaller, but in the same beam size you have more number of electrons. You are not increasing the energy in SEM, in FESEM. In field emission source, your beam size becomes smaller, and you are basically pumping more number of electrons and keeping the energy same. So your flux has gone up. So your sampling has gone up actually. Sampling has gone up without compromising on larger area, or you're not increasing the area of like probe area and stuff like that. So we'll discuss these issues in coming slides also. So
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, Hemant.
Yes.
Sir, in the previous lectures, you were telling about single electron microscope, sir. Sir, is it gives a high resolution?
What
in a
did I
sing-
say in the last lecture? Sorry.
सर लास्ट लेक्चर में जब आपने वो दिखाया था, क्या कहते हैं, मूवी दिखाया था, तो सर उसमें एक मतलब बर्कले में, यूसी बर्कले में सर का जो इलेक्ट्रॉन माइक्रोस्कोप आपने दिखाया था, उसमें सिंगल इलेक्ट्रॉन
No. It's all you are confusing. You are mixing up two things. What they have done is basically aberration correction. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So in TEM, the resolution is limited by aberration in the lenses. Here, that problem is not that much actually. You are, because and number one, you are not you're not basically looking for that high resolution. TEM is basically designed for very high resolution, actually, ultimate resolution. You can go down to half of an angstrom. In fact, smaller than half of an angstrom, around 0.35 angstrom. But here you're not talking, usually you don't look for those high resolutions here. And second thing, as I mentioned, that in the lens system, which you might have seen, below the sample, there are no lenses actually. So SEM is much simpler. So third thing, we'll discuss about that in coming slides, probably today, that in SEM, the resolution does not depend, I mean, primarily it depends upon the beam, the spot size actually, spot size actually. So if you can make your spot size smaller and smaller, so your resolution will be much better. And obviously, for example, I'm scanning this area which is in front of your eyes. I wish I had a blackboard and I could have explained you much better, but I will try. So, for example, I draw these dots. Okay, I teach it very nicely, this resolution, but this is a problem that I don't know how to do it online. So now, sorry. So now, if you, sorry. Okay, so if you increase this dot size, okay, larger dot size, and so this sometimes what can happen that you have these dots can start merging with each other, right? Obviously, so you will have a problem with the resolution. So one is the smaller dot size, another is the type of material and topography as well. So there is no comparison between TEM and SEM. So that the things which I explained was that concept was only applicable for TEM. And about single electron, which when I gave that concept about single electron, that was basically single electron diffraction, electron diffraction. So here
Yes,
here also in SEM as well as in TEM, no matter how hard you, the electron flux is not that much that you are pumping more than one electron at a time. Here actually this concept is not useful here because sample is too thick. Okay, so here we don't teach that concept of single electron because it's not required. Number one, because we are not looking at electron diffraction here. Number two, we are not looking at transmitted electrons. Number three, our sample can be infinitely thick here in SEM. We don't use thin samples. So in fact, here you can have, if you have thick enough samples, you can have more than one electrons in your sample. In fact, you can have, because you can take terracotta statue, right? And you can say that I can have more electrons. So you understand what I mean? So these two concepts are very different. Yeah, so why can't we just increase the accelerating voltage and get better images? With high accelerating voltage, the electron beam penetration is greater and interaction volume is larger. You can see it here, right? Therefore, a spatial resolution of micrograph created from this resolution will be reduced. Please remember that. If you try to accelerate much deeper, your resolution will be worse. You can see that it is broadening. That's what I was trying to explain. There will be a brighter image because number of electrons are coming. I mean, you're generating more number of electrons. In fact, your BSE signal will go up, or your signal will go up, but at some cost actually, because you are pumping more electrons actually at a given time when you are, because your velocity, when you increase the energy, your velocity is increasing, right? We calculated that in the first lecture, I think first or second lecture. So there is a guide, a selection guide, roughly it's a very rough guide. So if you choose between 1 to 5, you can use it for like biological samples or uncoated, okay, where there is no charging delicate means some biological problem, uncoated biological samples. But if you coat biological samples, then you can increase energy, and then 10 to 30 is for your chemistry samples actually, which are inorganic chemistry basically, not for the polymers. For polymers, you can take lower voltages. Magnification is fairly simple, that you are looking at smaller areas and smaller areas, so you are basically it depends upon how you scan. Actually, you have scan coils in SEM, so you can just select the area and then start magnifying. Yes, this is the topic which is very important. Often students ask this question, that what about the spatial resolution in SEM? I have already answered a little bit. I've given you concepts, so it will be easier for you to understand the spatial resolution now. So you can see that this is the area which is covered by the incident beam. Incident beam is highly pointed. You can do that, right? So now you can see that this number of secondary electrons. So you can see that backscatter electrons, the resolution is very, very bad, and because backscatter electrons are much higher energy, and so they have much more broadening effect in comparison to a secondary electron. So secondary electron resolution is better because they are lower energy than the backscatter electrons, right? So larger the energy, more electrons will penetrate laterally also, and they will worsen the resolution. It's a thumb rule. Very simple logic. So what are the factors? Probe size, obviously we have already discussed about that. Specimen type, element present. So there is a very interesting relation between type of specimen also. Current density, we have already discussed that if you take field emission SEM, you have larger current density, and then you can control the resolutions quite a lot. Dwell time is highly important, because you need to, when you scan, you need to stay at that point in order to get sufficient signal, right? ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए आप उड़ती हुई नजर से और निकल जाओ, like, you know, you should spend time, bombard that area sufficiently, so you get enough a number of secondary electrons from that area. That's called dwell time. Topography is always a factor in getting the resolution limited, always, right?
Hello.
So limit, yes.
Manisha, sir.
Manisha, madam, yes.
Sir, how can we be so sure about the topography that we are getting from SEM is true to the sample? Because we cannot detect all the secondary electrons, and also depends upon the detector now, where the detector is placed. Like that part only will be bright, otherwise other
No,
part.
obviously, you're right. So what you can do, you can, that's why people rotate the, can you hear me? Can you hear me,
Yes, sir.
Manisha?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was a problem with my internet. So that's why there is a, I'll come to that. So there, you have a, to answer your question, see, you can rotate it actually. Okay, your sample is somewhere placed here. Okay, this is specimen stage. So you can rotate it, you can tilt it, and you can tilt it whatever way you want. So you can take multiple images from various angles.
Okay.
There you get idea about the topography, right? But I agree with you that when there is an aggregation of particles. For example, I was looking at the images of Tubei is one of the SEM, one of my students. You know the name, but other may not be aware of Tubei Chaudhary. So he has done. If you look at his SEM images, he has tried to calculate the particle size. Analysis he has done from based on SEM images, which is very tricky, because how do you basically it's an individual judgment actually. Then like, how do you say that this is one particle when the particles are agglomerated? I mean, it's a human intelligence challenge actually, that how do you know, because it's a two-dimensional projection of three-dimensional object, so you really do not know. So there are challenges from different kinds of samples, which makes the life difficult. So one has to be very careful when one tries to extract the information. I have seen people who try to get the depth, and they try to get the depth analysis from SEM. I've seen some papers, ridiculous papers actually. You can never do that. So I agree with you that there are limitations. So whatever techniques gives you, you take it, and rest you leave. So that's why, Manisha, it is important to know these details. Otherwise, I have seen people who do not take these classes, and they directly go to the SEM room and analyze, and they interpret this in a false way.
So,
I'm
sir,
sure
will
that
porous, will porous structure will be difficult to detect or smooth surface using SAM?
smoother samples are easier. Obviously, you can more. We'll discuss about this question. Will be answered in the this all these questions are lined up actually. So your question will be answered in the next module. Okay, here,
Okay.
working distance and sample height.
Okay.
You go, your sample. Yeah, your answer is coming next. Yes. So
And usually, how many detectors? Sorry, sir, sorry to interrupt. How many detectors are like? How many secondary electron detectors are in the instrument?
only
Usually, in
one.
the
Only one. Only one. You don't need more than one. I mean, one or two. You can have in-lens. There is one detector of each type. Like one. You can have one in-lens detector, one Everett Thorney detector. But so these are, yeah. You don't have more than one. You have no place actually. You would like to put something else rather than putting two detectors of the same kind.
Okay.
Yeah. So to answer Manisha's this question about sample height, role of sample height, let's go. So before that, you have to understand the concept of depth of focus, depth of field, working
Hello?
distance. Yes.
Yes, sir, Animesh.
Animesh, yes. Hello.
Sir, you said that for polymer sample we require lower voltages. So why so, sir? Why is this
Yes.
required?
So
And sir, is there any effect of polarity on the on the voltage polarity of the sample?
polarity, no, not. I mean, there won't be much. If there is any, if there is any effect, minor effect of polarity on the outgoing secondary electrons, that will be just on the kinetic energy of the secondary electrons, and that will be completely masked by the positive voltage which is applied on the detector. So secondary electron detector is insensitive to the polarity of the specimen. Yes, if you are looking for polarity and work function and other details, so you should use in-lens. I think I taught last time in-lens detector. So if you want to look at the other details, so your surface should be smooth. There should be less topographical variation, and there should not be any charging effect. And you should use in-lens detector actually. So that can tell you more about the sample. I don't think about polarity that you can't do, but yeah, you can't do that. Yes. So
Okay,
about
sir.
the polymer, about your first question.
Yes,
So,
sir.
to answer your first question about why do you need lower operating voltage for polymer samples, you do not need actually, because even with low accelerating voltage, you are penetrating much deeper into the polymer sample, because polymer samples usually have low Z number atoms, right?
Yes, sir.
So because they have low Z number atoms, so your electron beam can penetrate much deeper into the sample. Got it?
Okay. Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
Animesh, this again, the advantage of this course is that this question we'll be taking back probably next week. We'll be discussing in detail. I promise.
Okay,
you.
sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay, sir.
So any of these concepts, even if you have missed, you will be understanding in great detail. In fact, तुम बोलोगे यार इतना डिटेल में क्यों पढ़ा रहे हो? Yeah, I don't leave the topic that easily. I really take you. I will take you down. तुम्हारी नाक पकड़ करके समुद्र के नीचे पूरा तली तक लेके जाऊंगा.
Okay, sir.
पर तुम्हें डर लगेगा वहां पे इतना गहराई में. तुम्हें डर नहीं लगना चाहिए. तुम्हारी नाक को पकड़ के स्कूबा डाइविंग कराता हूँ स्टूडेंट को. नीचे तक पूरा तला दिखाऊंगा वहां पे पूरा लाइव समुद्र के
Sir, we are
नीचे.
ready, sir.
अरे पता पड़ेगा. तुम्हारा तुम्हारा दम घुटने लगेगा वहां पे जाके. तो बोलोगे अभी बाहर लेके आओ मुझे सरफेस पे.
सब बचने की कोशिश करेंगे.
हाँ हाँ, जल्दी बोलेगा, जल्दी अब मेरा दम घुट रहा है, ऑक्सीजन चाहिए, बाहर लेके आओ. बहुत साइंस हो गई. अब नहीं कर रहा. So
Okay, sir.
I can teach you, you know. Anyway, so कहाँ गए थे? Yeah. First, you have to understand the working distance. Actually, working distance is the end of the distance between end of SEM column, like last geomagnetic. I'll show you the actual picture, then you will understand it. So you can see this is the working distance actually. This is your sample. One sample is here and another sample is here. Number 2. You can mount another third sample here, fourth sample here. ये दिख रहा है ना तुम्हें ये? यहाँ पे you can mount more and more samples actually. You have these holes. This is the sample stage. You can move it, and I'll show you a movie. Then you will understand about SEM. And so you can see this is this blackish. Your sample is mounted. You can mount it here. This working distance, so you can always reduce it or increase it. So now the question arises that what instructions you should be giving to the operator, what should be the working distance, and somebody asks you what was the working distance. So how does it matter? So now you know what is working distance. कि भाई इसको नीचे ला सकते हो, सैंपल के एकदम पास में ला सकते हो या दूर ले आ सकते हो. यहाँ देखो ये 15 मिलीमीटर है, ये मिड वर्किंग डिस्टेंस है, but it's fairly large actually. Okay, but you can see that यहाँ पे this is a 7 millimeter working distance, एकदम चिपकी हुई है यहाँ पे, right? And you can see that यहाँ पे बीच में डिटेक्टर भी लगा दिया. This is backscatter detector. Secondary electron detector is usually at the side, somewhere here. So, but it is removed here, and then you can see that yeah, this is a specimen stage, and yeah, 15 millimeter, and now you can see this is the X-ray detector. Yeah. So if you want to collect the X-rays, you have this detector, which are and this is even larger working distance. Actually, you can see that 30 millimeter, and you have backscatter detector and X-ray detector, both are in place. You can see this is the backscatter detector, and this is X-ray detector, right? So there are a variety of ways you can do that. More working distance means more detectors you can place actually at that point. But I will tell you the science part actually, that why. Yeah. So now you know that working distance is the distance from the top of the sample and the end of the SEM column. Now, how does it matter actually? Suppose working distance is 30 millimeter or 15 millimeter or 5 millimeter. You can see that you look at this, what is the difference is basically in the shape of the electron beam. So when you have shorter working distance, so the beam, for example, let me draw it for you. यहाँ से electron चले, basically suppose you have electrons which are coming from here, from the same height, and if you have shorter working distance, so it's like this. Suppose you calculate the angle, this angle will be much larger, and if you have longer working distance, so you will have and let me zoom this, you will understand. Now you can see that there are two things. One is that this angle is larger than right hand side for, okay, so this angle is larger. So so here this point, so this probe size is smaller than this probe size actually, because this is merging at a smaller point. Or if you take it longer, then this probe size will be larger. So another thing is that your depth of field, I mean, it is same as in your mobile phone camera. So in your mobile phone camera, if you are looking at uh, larger this collection angle, when your collection angle becomes larger, then your depth of focus becomes smaller. So basically तुम अपनी नाक पर फेस चेहरे पे फोकस कर रहे हो तो तुम्हारी नाक दिखाई देगी बस, बाकी नहीं दिखाई देगा. Your nose will only be visible and clearly. So this is like you're focusing on your nose, and this is like you're focusing on your entire face. So you can, so this is basically, this has larger working distance has advantage that you can see foreground and background both, and smaller working distance has disadvantage that you are compromising on your depth of focus, but your images will be sharper. You are producing higher resolution. Here you are compromising on the resolution. And another advantage you have seen that you can put more detectors when you are working at larger. So you have to see what features you are looking at. For example, I'll show you some images. Yeah. So yeah, so you can see that this is this image is here. It is larger. So you can see that this is larger depth of focus. Here you have smaller depth of focus. So if you want to just look at uh, smaller areas, and you want to just look at one area with a higher resolution, then you choose a smaller working distance and smaller depth of focus. But if you increase the working distance, so your angle becomes narrow, right? The angle becomes narrow, and if you are working with the larger uh, uh, angle, then you have smaller, better resolution actually. Okay, so let me go back. This is an advantage of FEM, that you can play with the working distance and depth of focus. It's so you don't need like in mobile phone you don't need 3-4 cameras. एक से ही काम चल जाता है, and you can just move the sample up and down, and you can decide what kind of depth of focus you want to select. It's a beautiful way actually, and depth of focus is much better than optical microscopes. Electron microscope has much better depth of focus actually. It is known that so shorter the working distance, smaller the diameter of the beam. So that means better resolution, better, smaller spot size. So okay, so disadvantage that focal depth is drastically reduced in smaller. It's not disadvantage. Sometimes you want actually to just look at the smaller. You want to focus only on a smaller area, a smaller depth. So it's not a disadvantage, but for some people it may be disadvantage. It may be a disadvantage. So you can read about it. I'm not going to go through this. Okay. So let me give you some example also. So this, I think I have only one example here, but I think this is fairly easy to understand. It's one of the most easiest concept to understand, and I have put so many sketches. Like this sketch is very easy to understand. So you have smaller working distance and larger angle, and you can see this shaded area. This is the depth of focus and smaller, and you can see this is the shaded area. This is larger depth of focus, and you have smaller angle and larger distance. So any question here? If you revise this, you will be able to understand it better. These concepts are, I know that they are new for you. So I think we can close it because you may not be able to digest further topic. So if you have not understood this concept, so I'll share the slides with you and you can revise them. And anyway, we are going to repeat these concepts in future also. Don't worry about that. But I think they are fairly simple concepts. So earlier I never used to teach even these things. So I thought now I have included these slides, and most of the slides are repetitive. Actually, you can see that there is a repetition. So it's fairly easy thing. Any question